Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. They say it never rains but it pours. But General Mkhwanazi has created a new saying. Since the 6th of July press conference, General Mkhwanazi's statements have unleashed a wave of shaggies who are singing It Wasn't Me. They're going to every TV and radio station to say it wasn't me. Caught you on the camera? Wasn't me. Caught you at Mulefe's house? It wasn't me. Caught you on WhatsApp? Wasn't me. Who was it? Who was it? What General Mkhwanazi has unleashed, it's an avalanche. It's a tsunami. It's an earthquake. And everybody is snitching on everybody. And they don't even realize most of the time that they are snitching. They're making it harder and harder for them to deny some of the accusations which have been made about them at the commissions, which are coming up in the ad hoc committee. They're going to be in trouble. So what happened today? Katisa Molefe is facing more murder charges. Today, 3 of the 4 men who are accused of assassinating DJ Somebody now face an additional charge for the murder of Don Tindleni. And all 4 are charged with the murder of Hector Buthelezi, who's also known as DJ Vintos. These people at this stage are DJ serial killers. They're DJ serial killers because they were clearly taking out as many DJs who were involved in any of the nightclub activities as they could. We know all of this because these events played out today at the Alexandra Magistrate Court, and the police spokesperson confirmed a lot of the facts that I've just outlined. All of these individuals were due for a bail hearing today, but that has been postponed. And this is what the spokesperson for the South African Police Service had to say.
What is happening at the Alexandra Magistrate Court? You will recall that the 4 suspects before you in the DJ Somebody case were supposed to appear today for a formal bail application. And that particular bail application has been postponed. But on our side, fair say this, in terms of the investigation that is being conducted by the SAPS Political Killings Task Team, as well as Party Organized Crime, they are adding 2 more cases on this particular issue or on the relationship with Now, the first case relates to the murder of Hector Buthelezi, DJ Vintos, as he was popularly known. He was killed in March 2022 outside nightclub in Orlando. He was killed in a hail of bullets. At the time, the suspects were driving a BMW X3. His killers were never found. We then move on to the same year, November 2022, where DJ Somebody and his 2 bodyguards, Sibusiso Mkhwena as well as Sandile Mieza, are then also assassinated and killed in a hail of bullets in Woodmead. We then move on to March 2023, which is the second case, Mr. Don Tindleni was then killed on the N1 near the N17 off-ramp. He was in his 5 Series BMW when he was killed in a hail of bullets. That case also was never solved.
As things stand, the work of the Gauteng Organized Crime Team and the Political Killings Task Team, which was led by General Mkhwanazi, is being vindicated. The motives for the disbanding of the Political Killings Task Team are increasingly seeming illegitimate. They're increasingly seeming as if they were done for an ulterior motive and as such were not legitimate administrative actions. The Minister of Police said that the Political Killing Task Team had served its purpose. And this was actually echoed just recently by General Shadrack Sibiya. However, these latest arrests show us that actually they were red hot and they are more relevant. They are more relevant, these teams, than DJ Maphorisa and even Kabza are to Amapiano. That's how relevant the Mkhwanazi task team was, right? On this issue of bail, because this issue of bail has come up a few times, I want to say this. It's bewildering to me that Katiso Molefe was out on bail. To be honest, I don't think that anyone accused of being a hitman should be released on bail. Because at the time that because at the time that Kenny Kunene and his colleague were at that compound being arrested, Katiso Molefe was out on bail. I'm still genuinely bewildered why the judge, Audrey Lidwaba, let Katiso Molefe out on bail in the first place. His bail application was denied in the magistrate court because the man is accused of being a violent criminal. He has 6 passports. He has prior convictions. And he is currently being accused of being part of a large syndicate murdering people. He's accused of taking part in drug dealing or distribution and doing inflated tenders with the government and going to extents of trying to prevent whistleblowers from preventing these tenders from coming to fruition and taking them out. This is not the kind of person, I think, who should be out on bail in any event. I'm just bewildered how he got bail in the first place. So the people who are being accused of being involved in these shenanigans are Katiso Molefe, the head honcho, the Hoshkari grandfather of this whole thing. I think he's one of the people we have to be paying a significant amount of attention to. Then the former Gauteng police detective, Michael Puletau, then Floyd Mabusela and Musa Kikana. And the police say that Musa Kikana and Floyd Mabusela, they have a long rep sheet with the police and they have a history of committing violent crimes that is longer than Scottie Pippen's arm, longer than Scottie Pippen's arm, longer than LeBron James' arm, longer than Giannis Antetokounmpo's arm. That's how long their rep sheet is. So the police say they've got evidence that Molefe ordered the hit on Buthelezi. They say the murders of Buthelezi, the murders of DJ Somebody, the murders of Tindleni were all linked to the pistols and the AK-47, which were also used in the murder of Aman Swat, who was the whistleblower who exposed. He wasn't the whistleblower, actually. He was the person who was mistaken as being the whistleblower who exposed the corruption at Transnet, because these guys were trying to do tenders which were worth over 4,500%. And that's how corruption functions, and that's how the state is looted by these Hoshkari fathers, Hoshkari daddies, grandfathers, all of these people. So the police say that they have more than just ballistic evidence. They say that they have other evidence which overwhelmingly indicates that these individuals were involved in the murders of the victims and the attempted murders. So I think it's important to look at some details around this individual, Katiso Molefe, because I think he's central to this whole thing. Katiso Molefe is a 62-year-old man who is awaiting trial now for a series of high-profile murders in Gauteng. He's accused of being the man who ordered various hits which were executed by his hit squad, right, which includes these individuals I've mentioned before. The police detective, Michael Puletau, 2 men who have a long history of violent crime, right? His bail application in 2024 revealed a lot about him. It revealed that he had 6 passports, including a Lesotho passport, which was issued under the name David Libitsa. So you may find that there's other people who know this gentleman as David Libitsa and are looking for him under that name. So Katiso Molefe is right now being characterized and referred to as a businessman. And this is a label that I think they need to discontinue. Either call him a tenderpreneur if you're going to call him a businessman, because you know he's doing tenders. But I think calling these chaps businessmen, it confers credibility and status to individuals who are linked to corrupt and criminal behavior. And then we just label businessman Katiso Molefe, businessman Malcolm X, businessman this and this, businessman Hazim Mustafa. Are they legitimately business people? Media, we need to check credentials now. I think moving forward, you guys should vet any person who wants to be called a businessman. Because that person could very well be a Hoshkari father or a grand Hosh daddy indulging in Hoshkari behavior. We can't just be calling everyone businessmen. We need to say, you know, if you're going to call them a businessman, you can say notorious businessman, you know, controversial businessman. Maybe we'll know then, oh, okay, this individual's businesses are not necessarily all in the clear. Because let me just calling anyone business. Let's just stop that thing of calling all of these people business people. Now, right now, Katiso Molefe has been implicated in the murders of the following people: DJ Vintos in March of 2022, DJ Somebody and 2 others in November of 2022, Don Tindleni in March of 2023, Aman Swat in April of 2024. Very dangerous man. And there's 2 stories about him which I think indicate the true nature of his lifestyle and the danger that he poses to society, and why I actually think that there are legitimate questions about the people who were around him on the day of his first arrest and on the day of his second arrest, and also the people who have been around him and the government officials, politicians, all the people who've been linked to this individual have a lot of explaining to do, in my opinion. So in 2023, there was a report in the BBC about a sophisticated gang which imported huge quantities of drugs worth about £3 million into the UK. And the leaders of this gang were jailed for more than 30 years. The gang consisted of UK nationals as well as South Africans, one of whom was Katiso Molefe. So the operation that led to the arrest began in October of 2002, and the police were seizing a variety of drugs, ecstasy, cannabis, and other drugs. The drug traffickers were caught with more than 800 kilograms of herbal cannabis in bulky electrical transformers, which were shipped into Felixstowe from South Africa. You see the South African connection? The cannabis, the 800 kilograms, and perhaps this is also why he has a Lesotho passport, because maybe he was getting some of the product from those countries in and around South Africa, right? So the ring was broken by the UK Specialist Crime Directorate, which is based in the northwest of London. It arrested half the gang after raiding a house in October 2002 and caught the rest following an undercover operation. 6 men and 1 woman were sentenced at Woolwich Crown Court, Southeast London, after they pled guilty to the charges. Those individuals included Robert Bill, who's from Kilburn, Northwest London. He was sentenced to 8 years for possession of automatic firearms and ammunition, possession with intent to supply 25,000 ecstasy tablets, and importation of 825 kilograms of cannabis. That's a lot, almost a ton. South African national Aaron Reichlin, he was also arrested and for these charges. Another South African, Donovan Mateman, and in that list of people who were arrested was one name, Katiso Molefe, who was 40 at the time. He was sentenced to 4 years, and another individual was sentenced to 2.5 years. So when you think about all of the things that are associated with the 2003 crimes that he was convicted for in the UK, you see that he was around people with guns. He was around people who were handling large amounts of ecstasy, large amounts of cannabis. This is the person who the media is just referring to as business person. I don't think that's sufficient context. I think more needs to be added to a bio such as this. Then there was the second story. Remember, Kenny Kunene was arrested at the mansion, right? Beautiful, beautiful mansion worth over 26 million rands. There's a story about that mansion. In 2014, there was a story of fraud linked to the mansion that Katiso Molefe is staying in. The story was titled, Fraudsters Relieve Bank of 11.8 million. The bank that they relieved was Standard Bank. Here's the story. In 2012, Sandra Post, that's her name, put the 137 Empire Place property on the market at an asking price of 26 million rands. The fraud occurred when the ownership of the property was transferred at the deeds office. And Sandra only discovered that this had happened when she received an offer to purchase the house and discovered that her house, her mansion, her beautiful mansion, had been captured by the cat, Katiso Molefe. The house had been sold and transferred out of her name. The property had been unlawfully transferred into the name of a Rudaport-based orthodontist whose name is Lawrence Pretorius. Now, Pretorius also participated in this litigation. He denied signing the offer to purchase the property, or that he denied that it was his signature and initials on the offer to purchase. He denied signing any transfer documents, applying for a mortgage bond at Standard Bank, or signing a debit order instruction for a Standard Bank account. Because you see what had happened was the fraudsters transferred the ownership and they also applied for a bank loan, right, under this new owner who has purchased this house. And the bank gave them the money. They charged them money. So Penny Sheneri, who's a director at Hogan Lovells and who acted for Miss Sandra Post, actually outlined that a terrifying aspect of the case was that the transaction had seemed legitimate in every respect. They hadn't picked up. She said all the paperwork was handled correctly and passed through every check, including those at the bank's loan department and at the deeds office. She said that they had conducted an investigation and they had revealed that the covering mortgage bond was registered simultaneously with the registration of the property to Pretorius for 11.8 million and an additional amount of 2.95 million. So can you see how these criminals are sophisticated? These criminals are sophisticated. Both the owner and the supposed new purchaser of the property were victims of identity fraud. Their signatures were forged on all the relevant documents, and the identity documents of the purchaser were forged. There were false photographs that were presented when the loan agreement was signed with the conveyancing attorneys which were appointed by Standard Bank. So according to the reports, every step of the transaction was fraudulent. The offer to purchase, the loan application, the City of Johannesburg rates clearance certificates, the SARS transfer duty receipt, the transfer documentation, the mortgage loan application. The fraudsters even were represented by a non-existent firm of attorneys who impersonated a legitimate conveyancing attorney from another province named Douglas Tatum. So you can see the whole process, scandalous, meticulous, but scandalous. These are the people who are implicated in these Mkhwanazi allegations. The 12 million rand loan that was granted by the bank was withdrawn piecemeal in cash from the bank account until nothing was left. And Standard Bank itself opened a case of fraud and impersonation. So we have to be aware that the people who are able to conduct this nature of sophisticated crime are clearly well connected. And the fact that Katiso Molefe was still living at the house 11 years later, I think shows how ineffective the system was in helping the victim of this mansion hijacking, and also shows us how well connected he is to be able to pull off, if the allegations are true, this type of a heist. I think it gives us an understanding of the man who seems to be in the middle, who's calling the hits, the man whose son was infiltrating Transnet and whose son is now on the run in Mozambique, one of the countries where they say he has a passport to. And by the way, Mozambique is one of the big ports which is accused of being used for the transporting of drugs into South Africa. Right? So you can begin to see the connections and the nature and extent of this individual, Katiso Molefe. But Mkhwanazi is unleashing all the shaggies. I thought there was one shaggy. Now there are more people showing up. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. On Clement Manyatela, it wasn't me. On ENCA, it wasn't me. Newsroom Africa, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. But they all want to go to the commission. They don't even realize they've snitched on themselves, some of these people. The latest person to do this is an individual who changed his name apparently to Malcolm X. That's his first name, Malcolm, surname X. He describes himself as a super consultant who consults in entertainment, who consults in construction, who consults in everything. Minister of Enjoyment, Entertainment, Construction. Malcolm X. Malcolm X. What a character. He is someone who knows the bosses, according to him, of the senior police officials because he's a super consultant. And one of the big questions, which everyone has been seeking an answer to, was who called General Godfrey Lebeya, who was the leader of the Hawks, to prevent the arrest or tried to prevent the arrest of Katiso Molefe the first time they tried to arrest him in December, just before the political killings task team was disbanded. Turns out it was Malcolm X. In December last year, there was a standoff between the police and the Hawks that nearly led to a shootout. Both parties were at the scene. The police were there to arrest Katiso Molefe, and then the Hawks showed up, and they had been told that there were people impersonating the cops. And they were there to apprehend Katiso Molefe in connection with various murders that he's been implicated in. The political killings task team was moving on the basis of the dockets and the evidence that they have. And somebody called the head of the Hawks. And the head of the Hawks didn't call the local police station. He sent Hawks to try to... Then there was a helicopter. The story is quite amazing. It's incredulous. It's unbelievable. It's stupefying. That's the extent of that story. That's how bizarre the events that have been outlined really are. So somebody called Godfrey Lebeya and the Hawks went to the Sandton mansion. All of that very unusual. And the question was, who called the Hawks? And Malcolm X says it was him. I'm telling you now, Tupac was not lying when he said South Africa is a movie, a drama, a series. Because who is Malcolm X? You know, he was explaining on Clement Manyatela and also on ENCA yesterday to, I think, Pule Jones and others. He calls himself a super consultant. And there are multiple reports of his involvement with unscrupulous characters and having brushes with the law. I'm going to give you two. In 2023, it was reported that Malcolm X was arrested along with other police officials for soliciting more than 500,000 rands fraudulently, which led to their arrest by the very same Hawks. So one day you're arrested by the Hawks, next day you're calling the leader of the Hawks. And in fact, on the Clement Manyatela show, he said that he was talking to Godfrey Lebeya about something else. Is this the something else that they were talking about? Is this the case that they were discussing? Yeah, people are snitching, don't even know they're snitching on themselves. So Malcolm X and members of the SAPS identified as Desmond Kikana, James Sekalolela, and Raymond Mokaile were alleged to have arrested the complainant and demanded 1 million rands from her so that she could avoid being arrested for fraudulent stamps which were in her passport, according to them and to the reports. So, yeah, that's what he was arrested for the one time. And he got out on bail. And I think that is still an ongoing matter. Guess who paid his bail? None other than the Johannesburg Transport MMC, Kenny Kunene, his long-standing business partner. He says, I've had a relationship with Kenny Kunene. We've been business partners since 2005. And everyone wants to know, is this the guy who introduced you to Katiso Molefe? This is on the Kenny Kunene side. Is he the one who was in the yard? He says, well, I wasn't in the yard, but I'm the one who called. So we're still not getting full answers on everything here. There's still a lot of questions. But you can begin to see that this Malcolm X character, Malcolm X Mzansi X, hey, oh my word. So here's something else that's spicy about Malcolm X. Something that starts to connect the spiderweb thingy in a different way. In 2019, Bridget Motsepe Radebe and Malcolm X were restricted by the Botswana government from traveling to Botswana. They were put on a visa requirement. Typically, South Africans don't have to get a visa to travel to Botswana. You merely present your passport at the port of entry for a stamp, and then you go in. Their declaration for a visa requirement was made in April of 2019, on the 17th of April, by the Minister of Nationality, Immigration and Gender Affairs at the time, Ngaka. I think that's how you say the name. And their declaration actually appears in the Government Gazette, Government Notice 247 of 2019. Radebe is the older sister of the South African businessman, Patrice Motsepe, and the First Lady of South Africa, Tsepo Motsepe. So, Radebe and Malcolm X, when they got onto this naughty list in Botswana, they were accused of colluding to try to manipulate the Botswana Democratic Party, BDP, presidential elections with the aim of toppling Mokgweetsi Masisi against the former cabinet minister Pelonomi Venson Moitoi. I think that's how you say it. So Malcolm X does know the bosses. He does know the ministers. He does know very senior people in South Africa. Can you see why this kerfuffle, conundrum, crinkum that was opened by Mkhwanazi is actually quite a large Pandora's box? Can you see? Because now we're left with even more questions. Even the Brown Mokgotsi interviews have indicated that there are connections which we need more clarity on between himself, Katiso Molefe, Senzo Mchunu. Because Brown is saying, I called this guy. And I said, why are you saying you don't know me? Then he says, no, I'd say to them, you're my comrade, you're not my friend, you're my... Hey. Even Brown Mokgotsi, those interviews, they're going to be played at the commission. They're going to be watched by members of parliament in that ad hoc committee. They're going to call you into the ad hoc committee. Malema says it's going to be there. I don't think it's going to be a holiday for you guys. At this stage, it looks like everything that has been said by General Mkhwanazi was empirical. It was factual and is being substantiated in these self-snitching interviews which are happening. The question now is really, how deep does the rabbit hole go? We know that there are skeletons in the corruption Narnia closet of the ANC. But the question now is, what is in the Pandora's box that has been opened by General Mkhwanazi? How deep does this hole go? How interconnected is the spider web? Who's the next character to grab a microphone? Are we now going to hear from someone named Martin Luther King? Is that who's next? Are we going to hear from someone called Assata Shakur? What is happening here? Malcolm X, I never thought in all the days we've been talking about this Mkhwanazi story that there will be a character called Malcolm X coming in telling us that he's a super consultant of entertainment construction, working with Gaten McKenzie, starting nightclubs, able to call the Hawks and have them show up at someone's house for his brother, who is not his brother, but used in a political and local sense as my person who's close enough to be my brother. You know who calls themselves brother a lot? It's people in the underworld when they're not brothers. I'm just saying, like, hey, look, Tupac was not lying. And it's scary, actually, how accurate the song Mzansi Don't Cry is turning out to be. A lot is happening. This Mkhwanazi story is beginning to look bigger than we actually anticipated. And how many more characters are going to come out of the woodwork? First we had Brown Mkhotsi, now we got Malcolm X. Who's next? Who's next? We'll see. Let's meet in the comments.